fiery, so dashing. His special delivery, hope, service, devotion, he supplied daily. His sweet disposition held so dearly, silly daughter, her special dad. My dad, the most tolerant, nicest man I've probably ever known. He drove for 75 years and never had an accident that was his fault. Delivered furniture, delivered Keebler cookies, delivered oil, so many different jobs, most of them delivery driving. Never an accident that was his fault in 75 years. He was still driving at 90 when he passed away, and he had glaucoma for probably the last 20 years of his life. And I can remember being on the highway with my son, driving in my truck, and seeing my father go zooming around us in the left lane. And, I was doing, I don't know, he probably was doing 75, 80. And when I saw him that night, I said, Dad, where are you going in such a hurry? Was that you that zipped past us? He said, well, yeah, I guess I had to get to the pharmacy in Appomattox before they closed to get my glaucoma medicine. I thought, can you imagine driving with tunnel vision? For, one of the most skilled drivers I've ever known. When he died in 2011, he had 18-inch biceps still. Can you imagine? From all the hard work that he did. And I never remember my dad ever complaining about any of his jobs. Just, he'd come home whistling. Seriously, I had a dad that would come up the back porch and I could hear him whistling like Zippity Doo-Dah from Disney. Coming up the back porch to go, I think he just always wanted to just make people happy, have a kind word, for anybody. He had a kind word, didn't matter, big, tall, short, small, especially women, he would just have something nice to say to you to make you smile. And I really think that after the life that he lived, maybe it was because of World War II, because of being a soldier in World War II. After Hitler, I don't think it mattered. Yeah, my parents lived through the sleepy sickness and the food rationing when the stock market crashed and the Great Depression, and then onward to working in, my mother quit school to work in a factory. They had to make uniforms, and they would meet, my mom and dad met. You wonder how a person from up north could wind up with a southerner that never even met face to face. They were pen pals in World War II. My mother's best friend was writing letters to my father's younger brother, my Uncle Vinny. And she said, Lucille, what's my mother's name? His older brother's lonely, so why don't you write him a letter or something? And they became pen pals, and next thing you know, that's how the rebel and the Yankee got together. And what they didn't go through, all the anxiety from World War II, and you think they thought, finally it's over with, and we're going to be all right, for a brief time in the 50s when they were married and had my brother, and then all of a sudden, then you're back in the Vietnam War, and then all the assassinations started, and they had to go through so much. And my father just managed to maintain his heart through all of that, to never change, and to always be kind. I mean, what a legacy to leave behind. That I never heard a person in my life say a bad word about him, that he wasn't a nice person. And I wish I could be more like him, but I'm a product of both of them, my mother and my father. I got my bullshit radar and my suspicious nature and my attitude more from my mother, but my father, if I could always be more like him, I wish that I could, to be tolerant and friendly and kind, and to not worry about what a person's skin color is and what religion they are and what country they're from. And I never saw him treat anybody in a bad way. And if he did get angry about something every once in a while, he'd get fed up with basically life in general, the hard work, I guess. And though he didn't complain, he would get sick of me and my mother complaining. And in all those years, he never laid a hand on us, ever. Or never laid a hand on me for any reason besides a hug. And, his only thing, he was the Celtic, I call it the Celtic way. He'd scare you a little bit. So every now and then he'd come home and he'd have it. He just couldn't take any more of our arguing. And if he said, I oughta, that's all you needed. That you knew it was, he'd say, I ought to take your two heads and knock them together. Or I ought to go get my father's rifle out of the closet. And you knew right away that and he never would have done such a thing. It was just to get us, he just needed to vent once in a while, and it would always end up with a hole in the wall. We had pictures all over. My mother she was fantastic at covering up all the holes in the wall over the years. But, it would just, and he'd just do that every once in a while, but he was so good to us. And just like I said, tolerated so much. And he tolerated a lot with my mother because he knew she was, even though she was a strong woman and she'd speak her mind, she'd get frightened, like startled is the word for it. She'd startle really easy because of all the, constant anxiety and adrenaline and all that for years. Just made her like that, to where she was neurotic, where she didn't drive. My father did all the driving, not only on the job. He drove us places on the weekends, drove us to church and out to eat and to every park in Connecticut. And, we were so lucky that Dad took us shopping and to the laundry and stuff. And this was after driving jobs. And, But he understood why she was like she was. And, my biggest worry was because my parents were the age of my friends' grandparents. And I'd always worry about when I was going to lose them. I said, will they be, I used to pick the year 2000 in my mind. And I'd say, will they still be here when the new millennia, will they even be here? And I'm glad to say my mother was still here until October of 2000, and she passed away at 82. And my dad was around till January 23rd, 2011, until he passed away at 90, almost 91 years old. So lucky to have a father like him, and I can hear him like my mother would be. She'd go on a tirade about something, and she couldn't stop herself from her nerves, and she'd be like, Harry, you're so stupid, Harry. Shut up, Harry, you're so stupid. And every now and then, he could diffuse something just with humor, just by a look on his face, and I can still see them in the kitchen. I could hear them. And she was on one of her rolls, and he turned his head, and he said in this really affected New England accent, how dare you speak to me that way? My family came over on the Mayflower. And I thought, she had to cross her legs because she was going to pee her pants. She almost fell on the floor laughing, and could completely diffuse, the anger with a joke. And it makes me think too, years later, many years later, not long before he died, my brother, who's an a-hole, he's got an attitude, he's condescending, he didn't have the respect for my father that he should have, and he was giving my father a hard time. I guess my son and I went down to play cards with him. We used to play cards with him on a Friday night, and we went to see him, and he was sitting on the porch, and he said, well, your brother was just here, and he told me, that I better clean this up, and he started shaking his knee, and he said, he was imitating my brother, and he said, yeah, he started shaking his leg, and boy, was I ever scared. Right away, I almost peed my pants right away when he did that. And he went on to repeat everything my brother had said with the same attitude, and just funny as hell. And and at the end he said, I guess I better get these things done. I asked him, I wondered why he couldn't do these things, but I guess it's because, and he put his head up in the air with a really smug look on his face and said, because he's semi-retired now. And I just, just the theatrics, See, so my dad would, he tolerated all my brother's bullshit, and but that was worth $1 million to. I can still hear him and still laugh. God, he can make me laugh, and I miss him. I will always miss him. I'm glad my son got to be with him for 5 years before he left this world. But I'll tell you, he left this world a better place. Wherever he was, he made a mark, and I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have a dad like my dad. And rest in peace. Love you, Dad.